You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 214. My name is Clark from 5cardguys.com and 5cardguys on Instagram. Co-hosting with me as usual is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess, both on Instagram as well. All right, off the top today, I want to get your guys' quick thoughts on two things. First, Hyung, you actually brought it to our attention the other day, but it's been reported that Perfect Game, which is the world's largest youth baseball tournament and scouting service, has come to an agreement with Fanatics on a multi-year memorabilia deal, which means Fanatics will have exclusive rights to manufacture, market, and sell trading cards and other collectibles of Perfect Game players, which we can expect to see starting as early as later this year. So the main concern from some agents is that these young players are signing away their NIL rights, name, image, likeness, potentially giving up millions of dollars in the future. Now, what's unclear to me at least right now, is if every kid in the Perfect Game system needs to sign this deal to participate in any of the baseball tournaments that Perfect Game organizes. So still a lot of questions around this deal. Fanatics, in that one article I read, refused to comment or elaborate at this point. But Hyung, I'll ask you first since you brought it up. What did you think first when you heard about this?
I grabbed my popcorn and I'm just sitting back and waiting for the war to happen. That's what I'm doing. I'm staying. I'm telling you, there's people don't realize travel ball is an industry. You know, it's a massive, massive industry. It's not necessarily all about youth development, but I will say this, Perfect Game, I remember when I was playing, they were one of the, I would say they're the second largest showcase. Area Code Games was first, and then Perfect Game was just kind of coming up. But in 2018, basically, it was taken over by, I believe it was a former agent. And they got a bunch of MLB players on board as investors, and you know they've grown it to nine-figure business, and it's just massive. So it makes sense that you know someone like Fanatics would try to get in there early, because if you think about all the superstars like the Under Armour All-American games in high school for basketball, like those are things that I think they're trying to capitalize on, because Perfect Game would be that high school showcase. So the Mike Trout, when he was about to be big, having an auto during that time.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of moving parts to this, because, from an agent standpoint, it's different. From a parent standpoint, it's different. From Fanatics standpoint, it's different. Right. So I could see why agents are, pretty upset at this, because this is their bargaining chip and negotiating things that they usually do when they receive a player's contract or whatever it is. So I could see from that side, from a player agent standpoint, that it ruffles feathers. But from a parent standpoint, if I'm a parent, that's a huge red flag, and I believe Fanatics is trying to just do like Perfect Game cards or memorabilia specifically. So I don't think there's any danger necessarily. I think it's a bigger deal than most say, but I think it's more the morals of how they're doing it, that parents don't realize that if you participate in a Perfect Game showcase, you're basically given the rights to Fanatics to produce any type of memorabilia. So it's like, it is a big deal in that sense. So I see both perspectives. Right. And Fanatics is just probably coming in here like, we do this all the time. We do this to every single industry, and we're not gonna stop. And I don't think Perfect Game's gonna stop. So to me, those that are fighting this battle, I don't think it's I don't think you're going to win because I think Perfect Game has plans to expand internationally, globally. So I don't think you're going to necessarily win that battle in terms of, what's right and what's wrong. And I don't see it as that. I just see it as those are, because at the end of the day, Perfect Game produced about 2,000 major league players. Right. Yeah. So like what else is being the feeder system? And, this is big time business. This is not millions of dollars. This is hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in a baseball market, right? It's a marketplace, and that's what people have to understand. So I'm not surprised, Fanatics, whether it's morally correct or incorrect, that's up for another topic, but it makes sense from a business standpoint why Fanatics would kind of go that route.
I appreciate you providing that context for sure. It seems huge. And to your point, one of the things you mentioned is that Perfect Game is just added 21 former and current Major League Baseball players as investors, and they include guys like Mo Vaughn, Sal Perez, who's still playing, right, Tim Lincecum, and Trevor Hoffman. So they're flush with funds. Right. And they're, like you said, can easily expand with the money they have. But John, what do you think? When you first heard about this, your thoughts?
I was a little confused on NIL. I always thought NIL was more attached to your name, image, likeness in the college world.
Right.
Like more attached to NCAA. I didn't realize that when you sign off your NIL, I guess, are you signing off your NIL for the rest of your career until you become associated with a professional organization?
I think just through, I believe it's just through licensed Perfect Game Topps Fanatics products. Like basically, if we decide to use a set of cards in this for this tournament, so the thing is, it's only a small percentage that I think would actually come into play compared to like the remaining population, the 99% population that attend these tournaments. Most likely, I doubt that there's going to be. It's more the superstars, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just your NIL for this tournament, not your NIL going forward afterwards.
I'm pretty sure it would be like, it wouldn't make any sense above that. Like that would jeopardize, I think, Perfect Games. Like I think the bigger issue is having these kids sign without them knowing what they're signing, more so than anything. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good to clear up, because I was going to say that might hurt Perfect Game in the long run if people are going to be like, you know what?
Yeah.
If I can make millions of dollars 3 years from now, I'm not even going to go to this tournament. Forget it. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think from a corporate standpoint, Fanatics Perfect Game makes sense. My opinion outside of that, I don't think I really have one. I just latch on to what Hyung was saying. He's more in the know of how families and people are dealing with travel ball and what their opinions on it is, and adding more money to that and yada, yada, yada. I think there is something brewing. So those frustrations are always going to be there. And, in terms of what it means to us and collecting world, I guess it's cool. I don't know. Like we get some cards from 15-year-olds. Like awesome.
Well, imagine, this is a good segue. Imagine this deal was in place when Mike Trout was in the system. So you have a 15-year-old Mike Trout autograph card.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if you expand that to like potential future superstars, how much do you think these cards will be worth? Do you think that there will be a demand for a Perfect Game licensed rookie auto, or our first Bowman's always going to be the ones that are the most valuable? Like, what are your opinions on that?
I think first Bowman's going to always be the most valued. The brand value is way too powerful. There's too much of a history for a new card to just automatically take it over. But I think there is niche for sure. There's collectors that, love that kind of stuff. Personally, maybe I wouldn't it would be cool. Like, let's just say you did have a Ken Griffey Jr., like one Perfect Game before he was big. It's like, that's a pretty cool card. Right. So I see the allure in it. But that, I think the bigger picture is more so like the potential they see the sports and memorabilia and card world and how big it's actually becoming. Like we're talking, I would have never really put those two together, I think, but then you're seeing Fanatics make these crazy, crazy moves, and it just shows you how bullish they are and how fast they're trying to monopolize this whole process.
And I think in an article I read that in particular for baseball, the development is so long for players.
Yeah.
Like it starts at such an early age, and they're trying to monopolize on that long process by getting in earlier and earlier with some of these kids being in the system for so long before they actually hit the minors and majors.
Right.
So it's just a business decision, really, I think, for Fanatics.
For sure.
And they're like, well, what's this controversy that's kind of suddenly blown up in their faces?
I don't think they realize the controversy there is, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think last thing I'll say about this before we move on is it's right now it's just a lack of details, right? Like even Eric Hosmer on his podcast, there's a perception that it's the exact question you're asking, John. Is this NIL deal forever, or is it just temporary for just the time they spent in perfect game baseball tournaments, right? So I guess once they clear that up, I think things will die down a little bit. But interesting topic and discussion nonetheless. And I think it is definitely more interesting on the side of what it means for the collectible space, that this is just a growing industry. All right, the second thing I want to talk about is GameStop. The meme stock / the video game retailer / now buying and trading of slabbed cards. They're getting into that space. So this came out a few weeks ago, but what do you think about GameStop entering the hobby space now?
I knew that's why I bought GME stocks before. I knew they're coming into the court.
Did you hold on to it?
Oh, no, I sold that top. I'm paper-handed. Come on now.
Hey, it's going back up a little bit,
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, no, I sold at the top. It was just it was too good. But what's it called? Yeah, this is interesting. But I think it's not far off from, I think, what GameStop kind of is currently in. I think they're kind of in that industry because I believe it's just trading cards and Pokemon. I don't think it's sports cards in general. So I think with their, I guess, product offering, and they're always looking to expand because the way they're doing it right now ain't working. So maybe this opens up more revenue streams and opportunities for them. And like I said, I don't think it goes too far off from their vision anyways, in terms of providing a used buy and sell platform for whatever it is. It's still, the games you could still consider under, right? So,
Sure.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's going to be great for the community, to be honest. It's a way that, slabs could be more liquid. So I think it's just a kind of like, an evolution of where everybody fits in this space, really. And you're starting to see players like GME, and it goes back to stuff like it can't be a bad sign, because if big monsters like GME in different industries are starting to gravitate towards an industry that really didn't exist, but now it exists, it's just showing you that there is a lot of potential within this marketplace, right? So those are all things that I look at in the macro scales that may not come into play into most people's perspective, but I think that's an important viewpoint to kind of see it at as well.
Wow, Hyung, you're nice. You're so nice, man. When I heard the news, I was like, oh God. I feel like it's just like a prime example of like a company just wanting to dive into what's hottest, what's making those most money, and let's just go in there and try to do something. I don't know. It seemed kind of silly, but I mean, Hyung is right. I think there is some sense in it. It's not, at first glance you would think, oh, a video game store, like what the heck do they have anything to do with sports cards or TCG trading cards? That doesn't make any sense. And then when you kind of think about it a bit, like I've gone into GameStop more recently because of my kids, and half the store is not really video games anymore. There's like paraphernalia and like Pokemon dolls and toys and TCG cards. So and I applaud them. It is a bit funny to see them try to get into this space in a sense. Like I'm sure a lot of people are kind of clowning them, but I do applaud them for trying to be as creative as possible and reach out of the box of just video games. I'm sure they want to find other revenue streams of trying to stay alive. I mean, GameStop clearly, by the memes and the stocks and whatnot, like they were in trouble. Like as a business, they were in trouble. So they have infusion of money, and they got to really think about how they're going to keep this business alive. So from that sense, it's okay. In terms of what it means to us as collectors, is it good, is it bad? We'll see. Like I have a hard time thinking about how they are all of a sudden going to be able to do this. Like their system, it's going to be full of flaws, I would assume at first, you know. And sure. All the kids that are on the trading, you know, the coming to card shows and whatnot, you kids have prime ability to become employees of GameStop, because they're going to need kids like that, right? Like kids who have knowledge in the sports card
right.
and TCG game. And, you know, like I think as much as people might make fun of their buying and selling program, you know, we saw Lamine James, and we saw a whole bunch of funny posts of people saying like, hey, I got this like gold refractor LeBron, you know, like I think it's worth about $100,000. Like, what do you guys think you're going to trade it in for? And you know, you got this picture of this like nerdy video game employee going, oh, I don't know, like, let me check my handbook.
Handbook.
Yeah, like there's definitely going to be a lot of that happening. There's no question.
Yeah.
But the more I thought of it, you know, in their depending on how they execute this, but I'm assuming it's going to be flawed. In their flawed system, I think there's going to be, not to take advantage, but I think there will be opportunities. Like I can't imagine them having like a live tracker of all of their lists of cards, right? If you've ever gone to a GameStop and you try to sell a video game or a trade-in use program, the guys literally have like a piece of paper or on their computer, and I don't know how, it's not live updating, it's just an update every month or whatever, right? So I think because cards move a lot quicker than video game sales, there may be times where, you know, let's say a Luka Doncic rookie card is lower, you know, the market price is lower than their trade-in price. That's a time where you can come in and take advantage. You know what I'm saying? Like it's happened before. Like there's a story of one of our buddies in our chat group, Ray, when we're in college. He let me know. He was like, "Hey John, like go to every how did it work again? Go to every Blockbuster you can. Right now they're selling used Xbox and PS2 games, or PS1 or whatever was back in the day. It was 3 for $10. There's like a huge Blockbuster pile and all junk games, but $3 to $10. And then GameStop at the time had this program where it's like trade in any 3 games and get like $30 or $40 trade-in value.
Nice.
So nice he would be cleaning up all of the Blockbusters, 10 for $3, like buying them all. And I think he ended up getting like a $3,000 credit or something at GameStop. He bought like a PS2 with like 10 games and 4 control. Like it was nuts. But those are the kind of things I think you might be able to take advantage of. I
think there are some stipulations that they're doing, like I think it's like $500, like a max in terms of the slab, or it's supposed to be something like that. Or there's like a price point. I don't think they're going after the high end market. I think they specifically said it's more the high grade, like PSA 10s that are kind of low to mid value PSA 10s. Right. And yeah, I think there are little, it's not like you could go and just trade in whatever card you want. I think there's specific like stipulations that, and it's just more of a liquid marketplace where they could exchange it for store credit. Because they're basically, if they're selling at wholesale cost, or they're purchasing at wholesale cost, or whatever they're selling, they have margin within that. So it's no different whether they sell a console or a card. They're just moving the money around the way they can, right? So,
right,
yeah. I think at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be like the 80s, 90s, where I think it would just be more difficult to take advantage of the system. They might have some kind of like a live tracker too. I think I might have read that somewhere. But at the end of the day, I feel like I'm more with Hyung. I think this is a really great thing for the hobby. Whether or not GameStop can make this a successful business or part of their business is a big question mark. I don't know. And I'm seeing all these social media posts of GameStop buying a lot of these Pokemon cards at decent comp values on eBay, but they're flipping it or they're trying to sell it for 2 to 3x. And, they're being made fun of because all the card collectors are like, oh, look at this. They're trying to sell a $100 card for $300. But honestly, is that any different than a card show vendor trying to sell their overpriced cards? It's the exact same thing.
The difference, they have customers.
Right. And they got a bricks and mortar store. That's the only difference than a card show vendor going from one card show to the next overpricing their own cards. The benefit is there are going to be some customers coming into the GameStops buying those cards. Maybe not the savvy card collectors like we are, or longtime Pokemon or TCG card collectors. They'll know to get it on eBay or online. But there's a bunch of parents, I'm sure, that are just going to like, oh, my kid likes this card. Yeah, I'll just buy it. It's just convenient 100%. To buy it here. The slab is right here. I don't have to deal with any online transaction. I don't have to worry about it coming in the mail. Like, I'm just going to buy this. People still like to go to bricks and mortar stores to buy things in hand and then just leave with it. So I think there's value in that too. And if they get more interested in it, then they could go, oh, I can get better deals on eBay and things like that. I think that could be a really good thing for people coming into the space as an introductory thing where, oh, I didn't know about cards, but since it's here in front of my face at GameStop while I'm trying to buy a video game, maybe this is something I might like getting into.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you know what, like bigger picture, as much as I am a skeptic as to whether they're going to be able to execute this properly, I'm with you guys in terms of how I feel if it's good for the hobby. 100% it's good for the hobby. I think the biggest, as a collector and or investor, one of the toughest, especially on the investor side, one of the toughest things about sports cards is liquidating cards, right?
Yeah. 100%.
With stocks and stuff like that, you have Wealthsimple, like a touch of a button, you can sell and trade, etc. But it's not like that with sports cards. So the more options people have to sell, trade in, or whatever they need to do, liquidate their cards. This could be a nice tool. If the deal is right, it could be a good tool. So the more options people have, for sure, 100%, the better for the community.
I think the right play in general is, notice that Fanatics is buying everybody. So be relevant and then sell to Fanatics. That's how you get out of the mess, Jammy.
That's right. Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
I've shifted my business plan at 5 Card Guys to do the same thing.
Just
make
be
it attractive to Fanatics.
Yeah, that's it.
Be valuable to Fanatics.
And be their lead content creator. That's
I love it.
All right, that's a good place to just go on to our next segment called Hobby Headlines.
Your brain needs support, and new Ollie Brainy Chews are a delightful way to take care of your cognitive health. Made with scientifically backed ingredients like Thai ginger, L-theanine, and caffeine, Brainy Chews support healthy brain function and help you find your focus, stay chill, or get energized. Be kind to your mind and get these nootropic chews at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
All right, so the deal is finally official. Ken Golden said it himself on his IG page. Golden is now officially acquired by eBay. But part of that deal, as we talked about in a previous podcast episode, is that the eBay vault has also been sold to PSA, which means all cards vaulted under eBay, if you have any cards that you've put in their eBay vault, will now move to the PSA vault. Okay? Nat Turner, CEO of Collectors, which owns PSA, said this to ESPN. Quote, "This partnership will make collecting safer, easier, and more fun. We're excited to combine the scale and trust across eBay's global marketplace with PSA's authentication and grading expertise," end quote. Now, we've begun to see why PSA bought the eBay vault, because it seems what they want to provide is an end-to-end seamless process from submitting your cards to PSA, which we still all do, and then the ability to list them on eBay right away to sell your cards on a 7-day auction. And I believe they're going to expand that to more offerings in the future, but it begins with a 7-day auction on eBay under a PSA account, right? So essentially, in a nutshell, PSA is getting into the consignment game, right? They're going to sell your cards if you want them to on eBay. So first, what do you guys think about this? And then after, we'll compare some of the fees from other top consigners, and then we'll see how it stacks up against each other. But yeah, first thoughts on this news.
I think it makes sense. We talked about this, I think, the previous episode when we did talk about when it was happening. But like I said, a lot of people are looking for that, what John said, the click of a button, it's processed, and you could see the emphasis on now, like grading it. And, so for the first thing that comes to mind is breakers, right? How much are they pushing breakers, for instance, right? That's more of a not long-term like hobby play. Like we sometimes look at slabs as long-term hobby plays. This has nothing to do with that. It's all about breakers to basically, they still haven't touched it. It goes directly to PSA. It's being graded, auction off. And they're basically collecting the fees and touching their hands in the whole process, right? So to me, it makes sense from a business perspective for PSA to grow laterally. This is how you grow laterally, and offering more products and services, investing in where it could complement the business they already have, right? So it's a process where now they're just probably becoming way more profitable. And, when we talk about like even the percentages, it makes sense in terms of where they are compared to the industry standard and how they're going to capitalize on something that they never capitalized on before.
Yeah, this is piggybacking off what Hyung said. I think this is huge. I think this is going to be trouble for the other graders, Beckett, maybe even more specifically SGC. SGC's relevance more recently has been low end, and a big reason why a lot of people were using SGC is especially like the Bowman game, you can get in super cheap, get in super quick. You're ripping Bowman or Topps cards, get it in quick, cheap, and then flip it, sell it immediately. And you can now, maybe not the pricing might not be there, but in one shot, you can send in all your cards. And most likely a lot of it that you send in, outside of maybe a couple for most people, will be things that they may want to sell or they're looking to profit, especially for PSA. Like people who send into PSA, you're trying to maximize value because PSA has the brand value. Right. Cards in their slabs produce the most profits. So I think this is huge for PS. I think streamlining is huge, and I think it could spell, it could be big problems for the competitors. So big move by PSA. That's all I have to say. In terms of consignment rates, it looks pretty competitive. I don't have any issues with it, and I think it's gonna be hit. I'm sure the three of us would be, if we ripped a whole bunch of boxes, we'd probably use this service immediately.
No, it's a good point about SGC. Well, SGC is under the collector's umbrella
brand
too, right?
Yeah,
that's true.
So it's in the same family, but at the same time, if people go away from SGC because there's more value in PSA now and it's not as expensive to go through the whole process, I don't know. Does SGC become again the vintage card grading company essentially, right? And then it's just niche for SGC at that point. I don't know what's going to happen, but that could be trouble for Beckett especially. Yeah, I think people that consider themselves more of a collector will hate this, right? They're like, oh, this is just another thing for, like you were mentioning, Hyung, more advantageous for breakers and people who like breaking and the whole gambling side of things where, okay, I could really, if I hit, I could even maximize my return by going through the system where PSA
and not touching it
to them, not touching it one bit. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And then, collectors are like, what's the point in getting, well, people collect or buy cards for different reasons. I think the more people realize that, the more people will, begin to understand why announcements like these are happening more frequently, and why the hobby is growing in some ways that they probably don't like, but nevertheless, it is growing. The industry itself is growing. So I think we just have to accept it at this point, and we talked about this with other guests where no one's 100% a collector, no one's 100% an investor. So it can appeal to whatever you like to do with your own cards. Like there are cards I just like to flip, and I like to go into breaks because I like the gambling aspect. And there are other cards I like to collect for my PC, right? So, I think it's going to be beneficial for a lot of collectors who like to play in the flip game. So we'll see how it turns out, but I think this is a no-brainer for PSA. Okay, so you kind of touched upon it, John. Compared to other big-time consigners, the fees are pretty, close. Like it's like people were asking on social media, I was seeing like, but how much is PSA going to charge for this service? And PSA actually wrote on one of the comments to go check out their consignment fee page, which is what I did. And I kind of created a chart for you guys just to kind of look at it in a chart form. And I'll just go through this pretty quickly. And, it's not apples to apples because different consigners offer different percentage fees depending on how much the card is. But I'm going to take just like the upper limit of what PSA is offering in each category. So what I mean is that for the first one, if you have a under $100 card, so let's say your card is worth $99 at the end of that tier, PSA is charging 16%. And I chose Probstein and DC Sports 87. I see them a lot in terms of consignment. And they offer 15%, so 1% less. So it's comparable, right? If you have a card that's worth $499, PSA, they charge a 14% fee versus 13% for Probstein and 15% for DC Sports 87. If you have a $999 card, 13% PSA, 10% Probstein, and 14% DC Sports 87. If you have a $2,500 card, 10% PSA. So it gets lower and lower, the more expensive the card is. 10% PSA. And this is where Probstein really takes advantage of higher end cards. 5% for Probstein and 8% for DC Sports. And actually for Probstein, anything over 1,000, they're charging 5% fee. Whereas PSA is charging 9% for a $5,000 card and then 7% for anything over 5,000. Okay, so 7%, Probstein 5%, and DC Sports actually goes down a lot. If you consign with them, they charge a 3% fee. So big picture, it's pretty comparable. Like it's PSA isn't charging an arm and a leg over their service. And I could see a lot of people just using the PSA service because it's just a click of a button rather than, I got to buy it or I got to slab it with PSA, get it back, and then go to a different consignor to sell. You know what I mean? It's maybe worth that extra percentage with PSA.
The one thing that really stands out to me, at least, let's just say we go apples to apples with all those consigners. Let's just say DC, Probstein, and PSA. You would probably get the negotiating percentages, if it's apples to apples, more along the lines of Probstein. So we're talking what dictates Probstein's pricing. It's their volume, obviously. So they get different tier pricing depending on the card in terms of what they're charged. But then PSA is milking in whatever percentage that they're offering above the apples to apples, above what Probstein does, which is the vault service and everything else. So it's in there. So I guarantee you PSA's pricing is very similar to Probstein from just the selling portion. Right. So if you look at the price difference, it might be 5% on a higher end because PSA might have to pay for insurance. They might have to pay for all these other things that Probstein doesn't. They just milk it in kind of like, well, it's an all-in-one service. Right. So
true.
Yeah. So I think looking at it from that, I think it makes sense where PSA can be still competitive, especially if you're not a Probstein. If you're just like a slab shark, you're going to have to do some numbers to get those percentages down. So PSA already has that leverage. So I'm assuming that's kind of like what they did with it. And they don't really care about the $99 and down, because they want to kind of avoid that, charge a premium for it. If it's there, you know, they take it. But other than that, those differences between Probstein and PSA, I think, is the difference that you're paying for the service.
Right. Good point.
And I think a lot of their strategy, even if, you know, I think that makes sense. A lot of the pricing is certainly built in, but even if they were to want to take a little bit more cake off the top, it still makes sense, because PSA is probably going for net new customers that want to use this, right? Like people that have been using Probstein or DC Sports and they're moving volume and they want to shave that extra percent or extra 2%. They're going to continue using those avenues. Those are not the people that are going to move to PSA. It's people that are more newer, maybe newer to breaking, newer to the industry. Right. You know, like I've mentioned this before, but this one time Roy and myself and a bunch of friends that are not into sports cards, we all broke Upper Deck hockey. And for Roy and I, if we get something good, we know what to do with it. We can go over to a local card shop and submit it with a bulk submitter or whatever we want to do, or submit it within our group.
Sure.
For the other guys, you know, yay, we hit a Trevor Zegras. And then what? They were like, oh, you know, like I can take the card for you and I'll send it to PSA. It's going to cost you extra. I'll get the card back to you in like 3 months or something like that. And the guys are just like, you know, I had my fun breaking, but I don't want to go through the extra steps. I don't really care that much. You know,
John's vaulting service.
Yeah.
Submissions.
There's just too many steps for somebody that was just trying, you know, quote unquote, trying it out, that it just didn't make it fun for them anymore. Right. So I think, again, if this moves in flawlessly with breakers, et cetera, it could be easy. Like any one of us or somebody new to the hobby that we enter breaks together. We have a Friday night guys night. We're drinking, like watching live breaks. And then what do you do with the cards after? I don't really want it. Let's send it to PSA for another $100. And then you can we can watch it auction in the next 2 weeks. Like they're like, yeah, sweet. Let's do that.
That's sick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I think those are like, regardless of their pricing, they're going to capture those people, because those people are not, even if it is 3, 4, 5% less in commissions, those aren't the people that are going to be like, oh, I'll get my card mailed to me. Then I'm going to like look at it. Then I'm going to send it to props. No, they're not doing that. I will pay the extra 5, 10, 15% to do it with PSA, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? So it makes sense that they put a little premium into pricing regardless, because they're going to capture those types of customers.
Yeah, good point. I agree with you 100%. I don't have much to add other than after you said drinking and ripping, we need to do that. We haven't had those sessions in a while. So
I agree.
Let's do that, and then we'll all ship it to PSA and have it go through their system, and then we'll watch the auctions and see how much we can sell it for. All right. Just another piece of hobby news. I feel like there's these kind of announcements every week now, so it's been kind of exciting to follow what's going on in the hobby. All right, let's go on now to a new segment we're calling Match Game. Okay, so I'm going to give you, both Hyung and John, $5 amounts along with 5 cards, and then all you have to do is match them up, and it's a pretty simple idea. I'm going to share a screen with you, and so you can see what I'm talking about. And for our podcast listeners, I'll do a social media clip, so you'll see how John and Hyung do after this match game.
This might be bad.
I think Hyung and I are on a team to match them, right?
No, you play individually, but
okay.
You guys can have the same answer. I think this is pretty easy, but we'll see how it goes. So on the one column, you got the dollar amounts: $50,000, $150,000, $174,000, $200,000, and all the way up to $925,000. Okay, and on the right column, you got to match up to what the dollar amounts are. So what did each one sell for? And on the right column, you'll see the first one is Victor Wembanyama's Gold Prism BGS 9.5. Kern's Cards they have a bounty out for an Aiden Miller Superfractor from the 2024 Bowman set, the 1 of 1. MJ, Michael Jordan, his star rookie, PSA 9, sold in a private sale. The 1999 Pokemon base set Shadowless first edition holo Charizard PSA 10 sold recently. And the last one is David Adams bounty for Dylan Cruz Superfractor 1 of 1, also from the 2024 Bowman. So you guys match it up. What do you guys think?
I should know some of these and I don't.
Okay.
This is tough. Hang on. The MJ Star rookie, there is a PSA 10, correct?
Ooh, I don't know. Is there?
I don't know. I don't think there is.
I don't think so.
No, PSA 9 is the highest graded? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I know I can for sure get one right.
What's yours?
Which one? Don't say it, but which one do you think you can get right for sure?
The Star Rookie. I've seen that number. Yeah. That was pretty recent.
So Hyung, what do you think the Star Rookie is going for or went for?
Damn, this is tough. I would say
if you didn't see the number, I think it would be tough.
I would say 174.
Okay, so I'll put 174 for Hyung, the Star Rookie. So Hyung or John, what's your number?
925.
It's 925.
Holy shoot.
So that is correct. 925.
Wow.
All right. Let's go from the top. This might be easier. Victor Wembanyama's Gold Prism BGS 9.5. Which
Actually,
of those numbers?
That 174 sounds right for Victor.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw the number. I don't recall exactly.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at the rest, the only competitor I see is the Pokemon Shadowless, because the bounties would probably have to be a pretty round number. So I think 174 is the I think that's the one too, 174.
Okay. The Victor Wembanyama went for 150.
Ooh.
Oh.
All right. So 0 for 2 for Hyung, 1 for 2 for John.
Okay, so I know that.
Current's cards bounty for Aiden Miller Superfractor. Do you know Aiden Miller? I have never heard of him as a prospect. Hyung, I'm sure you have.
I have not.
I'm guessing 50K.
Okay.
So I don't know the difference between Aiden Miller or Dylan Cruz. All I know is between Kern's cards and David Adams, I would have to assume David Adams would have the bankroll to give the bigger bounty. So automatically Kern's cards gets 50,000.
Right. Both of you are correct with 50,000. Yeah. And then we already talked about the MJ start. The 1999 Pokemon Charizard First Edition Holo. What number? Of the remaining?
What's left?
174 and 200.
Okay, so the Pokemon is 174.
Yeah. We got the Gold Prism wrong, so it's 174 for the Pokemon and 200 for the final David Adams.
Yeah.
The David Adams bounty is 200,000 for Dylan Cruz Superfractor. There you go. That wasn't so bad.
That wasn't bad. Yeah.
That's more challenging than I thought. But it's one of those things like, you know, when you do it in a test, if you get one wrong, you get two wrong automatically,
right? My kicker was the Pokemon. It's like, I don't know where that sat, whether that was the 925 or the MJ. So I was like, but then I was like trying to compare it to the PSA 10 Fleer. And I'm like, I don't think somebody would pay 925 for if it's the highest graded, but then it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Another fun game of We'll do it in the future. I like this. I like this format. All right. We'll finish off with our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. All right, John, we don't usually share our pick ones, but lately we've been choosing the exact same pick ones and the other person's scrambling like I did last time when I was with John. So, John, I appreciate the heads up that you gave us. So why don't you start this pick one for us, because we know what cards you're going to put up.
Yeah, this is a pretty common one I think people are thinking of. We've got Minnesota versus Dallas in the NBA playoffs. Yep. Two hobby darlings. Ant-Man is racing up the leaderboard in terms of people's minds of who they feel this kid is and who he'll be in the future. I think people are super confident now that he is here to stay as like a top 3, figurehead in the NBA, like, one of these types of players. So we got Luka Prism Silver rookie card, PSA 10 versus Ant-Man's Prism Silver rookie card, PSA 10 for their respective years. I think it's like 2018 and 2020 or something like that. Luka's silver has recently climbed to around 1250 USD, I want to say, give or take. Ant-Man was around 1250. It's like flirting now with like 1350, maybe even 1400. But for all intents and purposes, they're relatively similar. So of the two, let's say investment wise, because PC is PC, let's just say investment wise, which of the two would you buy starting today?
Whoever wins.
Oh man, it could be.
Yeah, go on.
Like if you're buying right now, so that the series isn't over, you have to buy this right now. Who are you taking between the two?
Well, I was gonna say on the side note, I was watching the game yesterday as of this recording. I was cheering so hard for Luka because I have his Luka card.
Yeah, me too.
Man, that was a nail biter at the end. Oh,
it's crazy.
Man. But anyway,
do you know the pop counts for both?
So actually, I looked it up too. It's Ant-Man's is 1700 right now.
That's a lot more.
I believe Luka's 2300, right?
23. Okay, so it's pretty apples to apples. Man, I think. I think whoever wins is gonna be your answer. But I for me, it would be Luka. I think Luka's like. This is one of the. I mean, it's climbed up. We always said that if it's $1,000, we're in, and I think it did go below 1,000 at one point. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think Luka is a buy in general at that price, especially where his prices were, and I don't know. I think Dallas is getting hot at the right time too, and I think, like I said, the winner of this series will probably weigh a lot heavier when it's all said and done. Whoever wins this series is the right answer, because I think even going to the next round, you're going to see a bump in both prices for both either player if they win or whoever wins at this point, right? So, but I'm going to go Luka. I just like the history behind it. I like where the price is at in terms of where Luka's prices were. And kind of like the long-term play as well. And don't get me wrong. And backer even, bet like $300K on Minnesota to win, right? So
that's wild.
I mean, it's a pretty bold bet, but I think Ant-Man has established himself as one of the top players in the NBA. So you can't go wrong with both. But I'm gonna go with Luka.
Yeah, I love both players too. I'm kicking myself because I've been trying to. I think I said this on the last pod episode. Like I wanted to buy an Ant-Man card in mid-season, and I wanted to get one of his higher end cards with a buddy. But then he was hemming and hawing, and now it's just too late, right? Everything's just so expensive for Ant-Man. But with this silver prism, I'm choosing Ant-Man just because of the lower pop count. 1700 versus 2300. I think that's significant enough for me to choose Ant-Man. And, Luka has a bunch of other cards too. Like he has so many as well that I rather have. I'm more on the mid to higher end. So I think for me, Ant-Man's the play.
Yeah, this one, I'm still kind of thinking about it. It's a lot, when you really dig into it, it's a lot more difficult than you would imagine. I think Luka, we talk about this many times, but he's the years 1 to 3, the hype years, and Luka is Luka. He's been like a hobby and NBA darling, so he's sort of the outlier of that rule. Like his hype has kind of been stretching beyond just years 1 and 3. But Luka's he's like right on the borderline of entering those lull years, where no matter what he does, his pricing is not really going to fluctuate up and down too much, right? And Ant-Man has skyrocketed. I think you could have, if you had some silver prisms early pre-NBA or early in the season, I think they were going for like I want to even say maybe 300. I don't know. Like I remember they being pretty low.
Mm-hmm. And 475 in December.
Yeah, like you're making a pretty, you're 3x'd, in less than 5 months or whatever. So could it go any higher? I don't know. Like I think the conventional answer here would be, Lucas is not as hyped Ant-Man is clearly on that the skyrocket trajectory, so it's bound to correct pretty quickly versus Luka. So the safe answer is Luka. But really, it comes down to who can win the championship. If Ant-Man wins this championship during a year where his brand for himself and what people think of him is just skyrocketing. People are comparing him to MJ, and he wins it during that year. Man, that card is going to 2,000, 2,300. Like, it's going to skyrocket. Luka, I think even if he wins it, the card could go to 1450. It'll get a good bump. But the thing is, if he doesn't win it, like if Minnesota takes it here in this series, I think so many naysayers are going to come out and be like, there you go. Like, again, Luka kind of proving he can't get it done. Like he good. He's awesome. He's, maybe like a quasi-generational player, but look, he didn't get it done again. And then that's kind of going to be his sort of storyline for the next number of years, right? So it's tough. I think the wrong answer is Ant-Man, but the volatility is still there, and it's tempting if you're like backer and you like to gamble a bit. And I don't know. I'm cheering for Dallas. I love Luka. I'm cheering for Dallas. They won game 1. I was a little surprised, to be honest. Minnesota went through Denver. I think they're proving to be probably one of the, if not the best team remaining of the 4. I hope Dallas proves them wrong, but I think Minnesota still has a good chance to go through Dallas. And if they go through Dallas, I could see them just easily winning the whole thing. So I think the Ant-Man bet is a decent one for the volatility in return. So I'm going to go with Ant-Man.
There you go. Ant-Man, by the way, is the right choice, not the wrong choice. But it's a big.
Clark he knows from experience.
Yes, I sold my Doncic silver prison at 1,100. So I guess I could have gotten an extra $100 if I held. But Ant-Man's also going to be playing in Team USA in July. So there's another thing where he could you could see a bump in his value if he becomes a star and
good point
during the Olympics. All right, I like that one though. Okay. Hyung, do you have one?
Yep, I'm going to go 2 hot baseball stars right now, gunning for the MVP, and that is Bobby Witt Jr. and Gunnar Henderson. So both are having career years. Both are, I think, 22, I want to say. Yep. Bobby Witt Jr.'s Bowman First Chrome 2020, his refractor PSA 10. We don't have a last sold price, but I think it was May 2nd was for 2,000. I think there's been a bump. I would put it at like 2,400 right now because the BGS 9.5 sold for like 1,600. Okay. Versus Gunnar Henderson, Bowman First 2019 Bowman Draft. His refractor sold for 1,500 PSA 10.
These are refractor autos?
Refractor autos. So at 2,300, let's just say Bobby Witt, and 1,500 Gunnar Henderson. Who are you investing in?
Man, I gotta look at their stats.
Gunner's having a year. He has 16 bombs right now, which is crazy.
So this one's easy for me because one of them is on my watch list, and one of them dropped off my watch list.
Uh-oh. I'm gonna say Gunnar Henderson dropped off and you're gonna go Bobby Witt.
Wrong.
Really?
So Bobby Witt was on my watch list for a while, and then he just, he lived up to the hype for this season. So it just got out of hand quickly in terms of what I was willing to pay. Right? He
is overpriced.
So I missed my opportunity. And then, I feel like Gunnar Henderson's just so, under the radar still. You know what I mean? Everyone's still talking about Jackson Holiday, even though he's not playing, and, that subsided a little bit. But early in the season, it was only about Jackson Holiday in the hobby, right? And then people forget that Gunnar Henderson was Rookie of the Year last season, and he's following that up with, like you mentioned, a amazing campaign. And I think there's an opportunity there. So I'm looking at Gunnar Henderson cards, seeing if there's a good deal for a low serial numbered rookie auto. So Gunnar Henderson for me, I think, better value, and his talent's legit. And Baltimore's Man, one of my worst takes. I'm gonna announce this publicly, but I didn't before. I thought Baltimore would just have a regression. Just a big regression. When the pressure's not on your team as much, you could play more loosely. But now that they had a heck of a season last year, there's more scrutiny, and I'm like, okay, let's see if they can live up to that kind of intense scrutiny, right? Everyone's watching them, and they are. So Baltimore's having a hell of a season, and Gunner's a big part of that. So I love the play of potentially getting a Gunnar Henderson at a good deal.
Nice. A quick question: Gunnar Henderson, if he hits 250, is he still gonna be the sought after guy? Let's just say he does hit 40 home runs, but now he's hitting 240, 250. Would that change things, you think, in terms of price point?
Or
you think they have to?
I feel like that would be pretty acceptable in his second full season. So it'd be okay. Maybe if this is a trend that continues in year 3, 4, 5, it's a difference. But if he ends up only hitting 250, like for the next number of years, he would have to be a part of the home run race. Like he's got to be one of those dudes. Swing and a miss, but he hits 50 bombs a year, and he's a part of that conversation. I think that will keep his hype value. Otherwise, that would be it. He would be sort of like a Pete Alonso, like a one-track pony kind of player in terms of the hobby.
Yeah, I think 250 is acceptable now. With the 3 true outcomes for baseball players, the way they, their strategy and hitting now, everyone going for the fences. I think 250 is more than acceptable. So I'm okay with it. It's got to be 40 plus. I agree with John as well. Like you to have that next step in terms of a premium on his rookie cards, he has to inch towards 50 at that point. But he's on pace to hit 50 now. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he's streaking. I like Gunnar.
Nice. What about you, John?
For me, I think this is pretty tied. I obviously, chicks dig the long ball. For me, I think the home run race to stay relevant in the hobby and in terms of volatility in your card value for baseball, it's so big. Like we see it year in, year out. So Gunnar's got that going. Bobby Witt, just looking at the numbers, he's more well-rounded. Obviously the batting average, the speed, stolen bases, it's pretty nice, man. His numbers look pretty amazing. But in the card world, or in terms of casual baseball observers, these are things that we don't see. And he's kind of buried in Kansas, right? Gunnar Henderson, he would also be buried. I wouldn't, for somebody casual like me, I wouldn't notice him. I only notice him because I'm, looking up how many home runs does Juan Soto have, and oh shoot, Gunnar Henderson's in first. Boom, and he gets noticed, right? So I think it's things like the home run race that he has to stay in. That's gonna keep his value. So for now, I feel like Bobby Witt, in terms of true baseball fans, is the easy answer. But for the card world, the fact that his Gunners is cheaper than Bobby's, because he's been under the radar in terms of all of the hot prospects in Baltimore, and the fact that he could be flirting with the home run. Let's see if he keeps it up, but he could be a part of this conversation when it comes down to the end of the year. I think I'm willing to roll the dice on Gunnar as well.
Nice. I think short term there's definitely a play on Gunnar, just based on the price. If it was apples to apples, I think for me Gunnar is the buy in the 2 cards I presented. I think long term I like Bobby Witt Jr. long term if I'm investing him in a longer period of time, because Gunnar Henderson too is he still, I think, has a lot to prove. This season's massive for him, and he's doing it. I don't think he's a shortstop long term. I think he'll eventually fill out, slow down, be a 40, 50 home run hitter, right? That potential. He's a big boy. Gunnar Henderson is not a small dude. So even him playing shortstop is pretty incredible at what he does. I like Bobby Witt's longevity, obviously. He's taken a meaningless Kansas City team to a relevant Kansas City team, which is very hard to do at a young age. So that's kind of the stuff you want to see in a young, kind of like generational type player. And I think Bobby Witt Jr. has been solidifying that. So I think long term for me it would be Bobby Witt, but just based on those two cards, I would pick Gunnar Henderson as well. I think Bobby Witt Jr. is a little overpriced.
Before we move on, so it's a Gunnar Henderson sweep, but before we move on, couldn't Gunnar Henderson be essentially Cal Ripken? Cal Ripken was not a small guy either.
Well, Cal Ripken changed the game of baseball. He was the guy that kind of brought the two together, right? So, yeah, I think Gunnar Henderson can, but I think the game has changed so much since Cal Ripken has played. I think, shortstops are looking like Gunnar Henderson. They are, five-tool type players. They are, and that's what Cal Ripken changed. Before your shortstops were your Dick Schofields and Ozzie Smiths that, had a career 8 home runs in their whole career. So it's definitely, it changed. And yeah, don't get me wrong. Gunnar Henderson's going to play shortstop until he can't, right? That's what we said with Manny Machado too, right? Sure, he was going to play shortstop until he can't. Tatis, he was going to play shortstop until he can't.
Yeah.
Right? The game will dictate that, so.
Yeah, good point. All right. It's funny when John was talking about looking at Juan Soto's stats, and then I was like, who is winning the home run race? Cal freaking Tucker. I don't know what he needs to do for the
he's up there too. That's right.
Austin Riley, Kyle Tucker.
Zero hobby love for Kyle Tucker. That guy is doing everything. 17 home runs already. Ridiculous. Anyway, I digress. All right, I'll finish with my 1v1. So we talked about the Victor Wembanyama Gold Prism, which sold for $150,000, BGS 9.5, right? So I'm going to use that number, and this might surprise you, but this baseball card also sold recently for $150,000, exactly the same amount. So which one would you rather have? That Victor Wembanyama Gold Prism, BGS 9.5, number to 10, or the 1975 Topps George Brett rookie card, PSA 10, Pop 11, sold for $150K last week.
Damn. Honestly, I would go Wemby. I mean, okay. I think George Brett, phenomenal player. I was a huge fan growing up because George Brett was the guy, and but it's almost like what's in right now. Would you rather have, a hot product or something that's nice but nobody would know about, right? And for me, we talk about being liquid. I just feel like that Wemby right now is the most desired thing over a George Brett. And just that alone is enough for me to risk it on the Wemby, right? Because everybody's seen his potential this year and it was fun to watch. So I think there's a lot to be excited about with the release this year, his rookie card. And yeah, normally, obviously, as a baseball purist, people are cursing at me right now, but the George Brett PSA doesn't I'm like, whoa, that wouldn't be even a top 10 card on my list.
Yeah, it's not a great.
So for me, the $150K price point, it's just I'd rather the Wemby, and maybe it goes to $250K, and then I could buy a mantle or something.
All right.
Yeah,
that's easy.
I feel like mine is easy too. I mean, we're playing hypothetical right now. But imagining if this was real, imagining if we had one of those cards, the George Brett. First of all, I think we're all surprised George Brett sold that much because of who he is. Yeah, he's one of the legends of the game, but he's not that's not a holy grail card for many collectors. So it was a very specific buyer that bought that. But I think that's a great example, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think that's a great example of where the collector and the pricing and it's very niche, right? It's so niche that the guy who paid 150, maybe it's because the other 10 are locked up in other people's collections, and this is the one guy that is willing to pay 150. And then the next guy who owns one of the remaining 10 is like, oh shoot, it sold for 150. I'm going to put mine for sale, and guess what? there was only one guy in the world willing to pay $150,000 for George Brett. The next in line might be, I don't know, it could even be as low as $50,000. Who knows, right? Like, are there really that many six-figure buyers of George Brett? I don't know. It feels kind of suspect. So I think just because of this whole, I know your 1v1 is kind of a little bit of tongue in cheek because you want to point out the fact, wow, like George Brett sold for that much, and wow, Victor Wembanyama sold for that much. But I think the easy answer has to be the Wemby. We all know. I think we all already feel what kind of player he's going to become. It's the gold prism, his main rookie card in a year where he doesn't have auto rookies, right? So it could become the rookie card in the future, like the card to get. So I think everything lines up, and you might say 150 might be crazy because it's only the hype year, and it's probably going to go down. Yeah, it probably might. And George Brett might be a little bit more stable. Yes, maybe. But I'd still rather, like Hyung, I'd rather stay in the relevant game with that volatility. It feels like an easy answer.
Okay. Well, you guys made some interesting points. Last 5 sales of the George Brett card. Okay.
Okay. So I'm
starting from 2021. Starting from 2021, which was the pandemic year.
Yeah.
186,000.
Holy
okay.
Geez.
May of 2021, 162,000.
Okay.
So went down. October 2023, 124,000.
Yeah.
One sold February of 2024 this year, 148,000. And then it just sold again for 150,000. So the last 5 sales are all over six figures still. So it looks like it's maintaining, and it's probably with the low, you're right. It's niche, but there's only 11 of them in the world. And it's an iconic rookie card of George Brett, 1975 tops. So I could see them being, even if there's only 20 collectors, that number's going to be stable because people are going to just like, oh, okay, this is my only shot to get one of these George Brett PSA 10s, right? And you also mentioned with Wemby, the gold prism, there's volatility there, right? Like it could go up 250, it could go down 50. Like it could go to 100,000 even, which is still a ridiculous number, but it could go either way. I could see it going either way. So I'm still going 1B too.
I was like, what is he gonna? I'm wondering what he's gonna come up with that justifies George Brett. Like I'm just like, this is interesting.
It's just too shiny. I can't resist the shiny card.
And it's
versus the gold shiny card versus a literal cardboard from the 70s.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But it is, you're right. Honestly, I can't believe the George Brett went for that much, but it is, there's a buyer for 150K. Yeah. All right, that was a fun episode. Thank you for all our listeners. We appreciate you guys, and we'll have a brand new episode for you on Friday. Talk to you then. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.